My name is Evan Lorne, and I never thought I'd spend my senior year tangled in the messiest, most humiliating, most unexpected relationship of my life. If you've ever wondered what it's like to accidentally kiss your worst enemy in front of your entire school, well, you're about to find out, because that's exactly where this story begins. But trust me, things get even stranger from there. Before we get to the kiss, yeah, the one that basically exploded my entire social life, you need to understand who Aiden Brooks is. See, Aiden isn't just any guy. He's the golden boy of Ridgeview High. The perfect smile, the perfect grades, the perfect passes on the football field. Teachers adore him. Parents compare their kids to him. People literally move out of his way in hallways like he's royalty. And somehow, I ended up being his favorite target. I never asked for his attention. But ever since sophomore year, when I corrected something he said in class, he's treated me like I personally declared war on his entire bloodline. And look, I'm not dramatic by nature. I don't exaggerate things. But Aiden? Aiden turned picking on me into a full-time sport. Shoulder bumps that sent my books crashing, comments whispered just loud enough for the people around him to laugh. That smile he'd flash like he enjoyed watching me flinch. I hated him. Or at least, I thought I did. The day everything changed started the same way it always did. I walked into school half asleep, clutching my notebook, praying I could make it to my locker without running into him, which obviously was too much to ask for. I heard him before I saw him, Aiden's laugh echoing down the hallway, the kind that made my stomach twist because it usually meant he'd spotted me. And sure enough, there he was, tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair falling into his eyes, his jersey tied around his waist like he was posing for a magazine cover. He saw me the same moment I saw him, and his smirk appeared instantly like muscle memory. He didn't shove me like usual. He didn't say anything cruel. He just leaned against the wall next to me while I opened my locker, his presence buzzing under my skin. That was the problem. Aiden didn't need to touch me or insult me to get inside my head anymore. All he had to do was exist. I don't know what snapped in me that morning. Maybe it was the lack of sleep. Maybe it was the stress of college applications. Maybe it was the way he whispered, "Morning, genius," in a tone that was somehow both mocking and something else. All I know is the moment he leaned a little too close, like he always did, my brain short-circuited. And I kissed him. I didn't plan it. I didn't think. I just moved. And the hallway went silent. Not the kind of silence you get when a teacher walks in. No. This was the kind of silence where hundreds of teenagers collectively stop breathing. Aiden froze, I froze, someone's phone dropped, another phone recorded, and in those 3 seconds of impossible stillness, I saw every emotion flicker across his face. Confusion, shock, anger, something else I couldn't name. Then he shoved me away. Not hard, but enough to send a message. Aiden stormed off, jaw clenched so tight I thought he'd crack a tooth. And the hallway exploded with noise. Gasps, whispers, someone yelling that it was going on TikTok. I just stood there, heart racing, mind blank, mouth still tingling. I didn't know what I'd just done. I didn't know what it meant. All I knew was that I'd crossed a line no one could uncross. By lunch, the video was everywhere. People stared at me like I'd staged a public performance. Some looked disgusted, some amused, some curious. My best friend Max slid into the seat across from me with the kind of grin you only see on someone who's watching a ship sink from the safety of shore. He said, "Evan, dude, you kissed Aiden Brooks in the hallway, on camera. Are you trying to die?" I wanted to deny it, but what was the point? The entire school had seen it. I spent lunch wishing I could disappear. What I didn't expect, what no one expected, was Aiden. He walked into the cafeteria like a storm, bottled into human form. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on me. For one horrifying second, I thought he was going to drag me out by the collar, fight me, scream at me, something. But he didn't say a word. He just stared, not with disgust, not with anger, with something sharper, confusing, intense. And then he sat with his team like nothing happened. The rest of the day passed in a blur of buzzing phones and stares burning into my back. I thought I'd made it through the worst of it, but then, just as I was packing up to go home, Aiden appeared in the doorway of my last class. No smirk, no grin, just jaw tight, eyes dark, breath shallow like he'd run there. He didn't say much, just 3 words that felt more like a threat than a question. Why'd you do it? The classroom emptied around us until it was just the 2 of us standing there in the echoed quiet. My throat tightened. I didn't have an answer for him, not one that made sense, so I told the truth, the only truth I had in that moment. I wanted you to stop. He stared at me, really stared, and for the first time since I'd known him, he didn't look confident or cocky or amused. He looked lost. That scared me more than anything he'd ever done. He left without saying another word. And that night, my notifications exploded as the video reached the rest of the school, then neighboring schools, then strangers online who didn't know either of us but had strong opinions anyway. But the next morning, Aiden didn't corner me. He didn't insult me. He didn't talk to me. Instead, he watched me. And that silent, intense watching changed everything. Because for the first time, I wasn't sure whether Aiden hated me or something much more complicated. The day after the hallway kiss felt like walking into a TV show where everyone knew their lines except me. I kept my head down the whole morning, hoping if I moved fast enough and avoided eye contact, maybe Aiden would forget I existed. Spoiler, he didn't. Third period was history, which normally wasn't a big deal. Except the second I walked into the classroom, the teacher said 10 cursed words. "We're starting a partner project today. I'll be assigning pairs." Assigning, not choosing. The universe already hated me. I sat in my seat, mind racing through all the people I hoped she wouldn't put me with, but the moment she called Aiden's name, my stomach dropped in slow motion, like a nightmare unfolding before my eyes. "And his partner will be?" She paused to read her list, and I swear time slowed down. "Evan Lorne." The whole room reacted like they collectively witnessed a car crash in real time. A few people whispered, "Oh my God." Someone snorted, and Aiden's pen rolled out of his hand and hit the floor like it fainted too. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. Aiden turned toward me with the dull, simmering expression of someone trying really hard not to snap a pencil in half. He didn't speak. He just stared. I couldn't tell if he was furious, confused, or 2 seconds away from quitting school entirely. The teacher made us sit together, side by side, inches apart. I could literally feel heat coming off him. He didn't say a single word during class, not one. He just kept tapping his thumb against his notebook, slow, rhythmic, irritated. When the bell finally rang, I thought he'd bolt out of the room, but no. Aiden grabbed my wrist, not roughly, just enough that I couldn't walk away. "We're doing the project at your house," he said. Not a question, a decision. I stared at him, stunned. Why my house? He looked over his shoulder as other students passed, and for a second, just a second, I saw something flicker across his face. Something like hesitation. "Just text me your address," he said, then walked away. And just like that, we had after-school plans I definitely did not want. Max nearly spit out his juice when I told him during lunch. "At your house? Alone? Evan, this is how horror movies start." "It's a project," I mumbled. "Sure," he said, raising an eyebrow. "And kissing him in the hallway was an accident." It was an accident. He just smiled. Yeah, keep saying that. By the time the final bell rang, my nerves were a shredded mess. Aiden showed up outside school exactly on time, hands shoved in his pockets, looking strangely tense. We walked to my house in absolute silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind where every footstep sounds like you're walking toward a firing squad. When we finally got to my house, he paused in my doorway, like stepping inside was a bigger deal than it should have been. His eyes scanned everything. My bookshelf, the pictures on the wall, my sketchbook on the coffee table. We sat at the table to start the project, but it was painfully clear he wasn't focusing. He kept fidgeting, glancing at me, then looking away quickly like he wasn't supposed to be looking. 20 minutes passed before he finally spoke. So, about the other day. I closed my laptop slowly. Yeah? He didn't look at me when he spoke. His voice was low, controlled, like he was choosing every word carefully. Don't do that again. My chest tightened. I wasn't planning to. Good. Silence again. Heavy. Awkward. But something in his voice didn't match the words. The sharpness was gone. There was no mocking edge, no threat, just discomfort. We went back to working, but then the weirdest thing happened. Aiden started to relax. Slowly. He leaned back in his chair, asked what part of the project I wanted to handle, even made a comment about my neighborhood being quiet. And then, no warning, he got curious. "Why'd you correct me in class that day?" he asked. I blinked. "What day?" "Sophomore year," he said, in math. I stared. "You still remember that?" His jaw tightened. Yeah. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. He'd held on to that? He remembered the exact moment he decided to start bullying me? "That's why you targeted me?" I asked, almost whispering. Aiden didn't answer. He didn't have to. He rubbed the side of his neck, suddenly uncomfortable. It was stupid. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to process the fact that the guy who made my life miserable remembered the moment he chose to do it. The air between us shifted, softened somehow. But then, because Aiden is a walking contradiction, he leaned forward suddenly, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on mine. "Why'd you kiss me?" My breath caught. There was no judgment in his voice, no mockery, just a raw, intense curiosity that made my pulse jump. I swallowed. "I don't know." Liar. I froze. He said it so quietly, so simply, like he wasn't accusing me, just stating a fact. And then, before I could respond, he stood up. "I should go." He grabbed his bag and walked out so fast I didn't even have time to process what happened. The door clicked shut behind me, and I felt like I'd lived 3 different lives in one afternoon. And the next day, things didn't get less weird. Aiden didn't talk to me, didn't touch me, but he watched me again, with that same intense, unpredictable stare, the kind that made me feel exposed, but also seen in a way I didn't know how to handle. By the time we met for the project again 2 days later, the tension felt thick enough to cut. But this time, Aiden arrived looking different, quieter, almost nervous. He barely got a word out before his phone buzzed. One glance at the screen and his entire expression changed. Not anger, not annoyance, fear. He went pale, muttered a tight, "I'll be back," and stepped outside. But the door didn't close fully, and I heard just enough of the muffled conversation to understand the tone. A man's voice, sharp, demanding, cold. Aiden's responses were clipped, obedient, and strained. Yes, sir. I know. I said I'm working on it. No, I won't mess it up. When he came back inside, he looked like someone had sucked all the air out of him. He sat down slowly, shoulders tense, eyes unfocused. I didn't want to pry, but something in me nudged forward. "Was that your dad?" I asked softly. His jaw clenched so hard I could practically hear his teeth grind. "I don't want to talk about it." But the thing is, he looked like he did. He looked like someone who hadn't talked to anyone about anything real in years. So I didn't push. I just nodded and went back to typing.
And maybe that was what he needed, because 10 minutes later, completely out of nowhere, Aiden whispered, "He wants me to be perfect." I turned slowly. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring down at the table like he couldn't lift his head. If I'm not perfect, I don't exist in his eyes. There was a crack in his voice. A tiny one, but it was enough. I didn't say anything. Words felt too fragile for the moment. Aiden exhaled shakily. It's easier to play the role everyone already expects. "The golden boy?" I asked. He nodded once. "But that's not you," I murmured without thinking. His eyes snapped up and met mine, and for the first time ever, I saw him. Not the athlete, not the bully, not the confident front he wore like armor. Just a boy who was breaking under pressure he never asked for. He blinked rapidly, like he was trying not to show emotion. Then he grabbed his bag again. "I need to go." This time, when he left, I felt something twist inside me. Not fear, not anger. Something much more dangerous. Sympathy, curiosity, connection, all wrapped around the boy who used to make my life miserable. And that was the moment everything between us truly started to change. After that strange, heavy afternoon at my house, I told myself things would go back to normal. I told myself Aiden would retreat into pretending I didn't exist. I told myself I'd stop thinking about the way his voice broke when he said the word perfect. But of course, nothing went back to normal. 2 days later, Saturday afternoon, I was sprawled on my bed half asleep when my phone buzzed. I didn't expect anyone except Max to text me, but when I checked the screen, my heart jumped straight into my throat. "Aiden Brooks. Come to my house." No hello, no explanation, no address, because apparently he assumed I already knew where he lived, which I did, unfortunately. His house was in the expensive part of Ridgeview. Everyone knew which one was the Brooks house. At first, I thought it was a mistake, or a cruel joke. Or maybe he dropped his phone and a ghost typed that out for him. But then he sent another message. "Aiden, for the project. My basement door is open. Just come in." My basement door is open. Not the front door, not the gate. The basement. My stomach twisted. This absolutely sounded like how a murder documentary starts. But the thing was, I went. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe curiosity? Maybe concern? Maybe the fact that I couldn't get the sound of his cracked voice out of my head? The Brooks house looked like it belonged in a magazine. Perfect lawn, perfect hedges, perfectly polished windows that reflected the sky like mirrors. Everything about the place screamed pressure. When I walked around the side and found the basement door just like he said, it was unlocked. I pushed it open slowly. The basement wasn't creepy like I expected. It was spotless, cold, and organized to a fault. Trophies lined the shelves, notebooks stacked neatly, a treadmill, football gear arranged by color and size. It wasn't a basement.
It was a performance chamber, a shrine to perfection. Aiden stood in the middle of the room with his hands on his hips, back tense. When he turned around, he looked different. Not angry, not smug, just exhausted. "You came," he said quietly. "You told me to." "Yeah," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "I guess I did." He motioned to the desk where our project materials were laid out more neatly than I ever left anything in my life. We worked silently for a while, the only sounds the scratch of pens and the hum of the fluorescent lights. But I could feel him watching me. Not constantly, just occasionally, like he was checking to make sure I hadn't disappeared. Eventually, I couldn't take the silence anymore. "Your house is quiet," I said. He didn't look up. "It always is." "No siblings?" I asked. "No." "Your parents not home?" He gave a short, humorless laugh. "My dad's golfing with clients. My mom's visiting her sister. They don't really do weekends." I blinked. "What does that mean?" "They're busy," he said plainly. "They're always busy." The room felt colder suddenly. I wasn't sure if it was the air conditioning or of the realization that Aiden lived surrounded by trophies, but not people. "Is that why you wanted to work here?" I asked softly. He shrugged. "Here, I can control the silence." I didn't know how to respond to that. Control the silence. What kind of sentence was that for a 17-year-old to say? We kept working until our notes turned into tangles of highlighted lines. Then Aiden leaned back in his chair and stared up at the ceiling. "Can I ask you something?" My pulse kicked. "Sure." He turned his head toward me, eyes dark and unsettlingly honest. "Do you hate me?" The air thinged. I swallowed hard. "I used to." "Used to," he echoed, almost to himself. "Yeah," I said carefully, "but people change." Aiden sat up, not abruptly, just enough to close the distance between us a bit. "You think I changed?" "A little," I said. "Enough." He studied my face like he was trying to memorize something. Then, without warning, he stood and walked toward the wall where a row of trophies glimmered under the light. "You want to know something stupid?" he asked with his back to me. "Sure." He traced a finger over a gold plaque. "Every one of these trophies, they're a reminder, not of winning, but of expectation." He turned, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. "I don't get to make mistakes, Evan." My chest tightened. "Everyone makes mistakes." "Not me," he said, voice low. "Not in this house." The room felt too small, too fragile for the weight of what he was saying. "I think you want to be more than what they expect," I said quietly. Aiden flinched. "You don't know me," he whispered. "I know enough. I know you're not the person you pretend to be at school." He took a step toward me. Then another. The room shrank with every inch he closed. "Who do you think I am then?" he asked, voice barely above a breath. I couldn't look away. Not from him. Not from the storm brewing behind his eyes. "I think you're someone who feels trapped, and someone who doesn't know who he's allowed to be." He exhaled shakily. Then he reached for my wrist. Not roughly, not aggressively, just a soft, hesitant touch that felt more intimate than anything he'd done before. "You shouldn't say things like that," he murmured. "Why not?" I asked, my voice just as soft. He looked at my mouth, And that was the moment I realized he was going to kiss me. I felt it before it happened. The warmth of his breath, the tension in his fingers, the way his eyes flickered, like he was fighting himself. And then he moved. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't rough, it was desperate. Aiden Brooks kissed me like someone drowning and grabbing the nearest air pocket. Like he needed it, needed me. His hand slid to the back of my neck, my fingers curled into his shirt. The kiss wasn't practiced or perfect, it was messy, confused, charged. But when he finally pulled back, his expression wasn't angry, it was terrified. He stumbled a step away, running his hand over his face like he was trying to erase the moment. "I shouldn't have done that," he whispered. I wiped my thumb across my lip. It still tingled. "You wanted to," I said quietly. "That's the problem," he shot back, voice cracking. "I'm not allowed to want anything that isn't on the script." "The script?" I repeated. He laughed bitterly. "Be the best, be the strongest, be straight, be everything my dad is." He shook his head, breathing unevenly. "I'm not Dylan," he said suddenly. I blinked. "Who?" "Who they want me to be," he muttered. "I'm Brooks, their legacy, their puppet." It was the most honest thing he had ever said, and it broke something inside me. "Aiden," I whispered, stepping closer, but he stepped back. "I shouldn't be here, with you." "You kissed me," I reminded him gently, "and I'll hate myself for it later." He ran his hand through his hair again, pacing in short, anxious steps. He wasn't angry at me. He was angry at himself, at his life, at the cage he lived in. "Do you want me to leave?" I asked softly. He froze. Then he shook his head, just once. "No," he whispered. "I don't want you to leave." I walked toward him slowly, making sure he could stop me if he wanted to. But he didn't. He let me close the gap. He let our shoulders touch. He let the silence settle into something fragile and real. Aiden looked at me with a softness that wasn't supposed to exist on his face. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted. "You don't have to," I said. "Just be honest." He swallowed tightly. "I'm trying." And for the first time, I believed him. After that moment in the basement, the air between us changed. There was something unspoken, something fragile, like a glass sculpture balanced on a thin shelf. I thought it would stay that way, quiet, suspended, but the world outside Aiden's basement didn't care about fragile things. Sunday afternoon, I got another text. "Aiden, need to talk now. Basement." There was a sharpness in the words that made my chest tighten. I didn't hesitate this time. I found the basement door unlocked again, the same cold, sterile light spilling over the trophies and notebooks. Aiden was pacing, the tension in his shoulders so thick I could almost feel it from where I stood. He started, then stopped, shaking his head. "I shouldn't even be saying this." "Just say it," I urged gently. He let out a harsh laugh that didn't reach his eyes. My dad, his hands curled into fists at his sides, trembling slightly. "He came home early. I told him I didn't want to do the summer program. He stopped, swallowed, his jaw tight. "I told him I don't want to be what he wants." I stayed silent, let him get it out. He yelled. He said I'm ruining everything, that I'm pathetic, that I'm weak. And he slammed his hand on the desk. "Everything, Evan. All of it." His voice broke. "All the trophies, the grades, the persona. He wants a perfect son, and He finally sank into a chair, head in his hands. I can't be that. The basement felt impossibly small. The walls lined with his accomplishments seemed to close in on him, on us. I stepped closer, slowly, like approaching a skittish animal. I'm here, I said softly and let my hand hover near his shoulder. He flinched at first, then I rested it gently on him. The warmth of my touch was an anchor. I hate myself, he whispered. I hate that I want things he doesn't approve of. I hate that I kissed you, He cut himself off, breathing uneven. I hate everything. You don't have to hate yourself, Aiden. None of this makes you a bad person. He looked up at me then, eyes glossy, red-rimmed, searching mine as if hoping I would agree. You think I'm not irredeemable? I shook my head slowly. I think you're scared, and that's normal. That doesn't make you a bad person. It means you're human. He let out a trembling laugh. Human. Right. I forgot what that felt like. I pulled the chair slightly closer, sitting beside him, careful not to crowd him. He didn't move away. I reached out, letting my hand rest lightly over his. You're not alone, Aiden. You don't have to face him or all this pressure by yourself. For a long moment, he just stared at our hands. Then, quietly, he leaned into me. Not fully, not like he would in a kiss, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of his head near mine. I didn't pull away. I'm sorry, he murmured after a while, for everything. The way I've treated you, the way I acted at school, the insults, the pushing you away when I shouldn't have. All of it. I shook my head. Don't apologize for surviving, Aiden. That's what all of this is. You're just trying to survive the expectations, and you're learning, slowly, how to be yourself. He swallowed, a shudder running through him. I've hated myself for so long, Evan. I don't even know who I am without all the trophies, the grades, the scripts. And yet, when I'm with you, he paused, voice cracking. I feel like maybe I can be me. I swallowed hard, feeling my own chest tighten. His words were a confession and a plea, all at once. Then be you, I whispered. Right here, right now. Doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't have to be anything anyone else wants. He closed his eyes, letting out a long breath, like a dam breaking. I don't know how to do that. You don't have to know yet, I said. I'll figure it out with you. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. He leaned closer again, resting his head against my shoulder this time. Not like a lover yet, not fully, but like a human seeking comfort. And I let him stay. Because sometimes the simplest act of love is just being present. We sat there for a while in silence that no longer felt empty. The fluorescent light hummed above, casting shadows that seemed less like cages now, and more like walls that could be crossed. Eventually, he pulled back slightly, meeting my eyes. You make me feel sane, he said quietly. And scared, because I don't want to lose that. You won't lose it, I said. Not if you don't want to. He hesitated, then nodded once, sharply. Thank you. For not leaving. For being here. I'm not going anywhere, I assured him. And in that basement, surrounded by trophies that had once symbolized pressure and perfection, we found something real, something messy and human and hours. Monday morning, school felt different. Aiden didn't glide through the hallways with the same detached arrogance. There was a softness in the way he moved, a subtle ease in his interactions with people. Not loud, not showy, just different. And I noticed. Max noticed too, nudging me as we walked to class. "You see it too, right?" he whispered. "See what?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "Brooks, he looks lighter," Max said, his eyebrows raised, like a weight lifted. I nodded. "Yeah, I think he's figuring things out." At lunch, I found him alone, headphones around his neck, eyes on his notebook. I slid into the seat across from him. "Hey," I said softly. "Hey," he replied, eyes flicking up. A small, almost shy smile curved his lips. "Didn't think you'd sit with me." "I'm here," I said simply. He nodded, and for a moment, words weren't necessary. The silence was comfortable, the kind that only comes from mutual understanding. Later, as we walked through the crowded hallways, I caught snippets of his interactions. People who had once feared him now seemed curious. Some even smiled. Not all, not yet, but enough that it felt like a crack in the armor. And I realized something. Aiden was still the same person in some ways. Still intense, still complicated, still Brooks. But there was a new layer now, a hint of honesty, a glimpse of freedom. And I was part of it. By the time the final bell rang, I felt a strange sense of hope. Not a dramatic, sweeping ending, just progress. Real, human progress. And as we parted ways at the school gate, Aiden turned to me and whispered, almost shyly, "See you tomorrow?" I smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "See you tomorrow." Because we both knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. And for the first time, I felt like maybe we could survive this together. The rest of the week passed in a strange, suspended rhythm. Aiden and I kept to our fragile new understanding. No dramatic confessions in the hallways, no shouting matches or stolen glances that drew attention. Just small moments, passing each other in the cafeteria, lingering near lockers, scribbling notes to one another in class. But beneath the quiet, everything had shifted. I could feel it every time his eyes found mine, softening instead of challenging. Every time he let his hand brush mine, deliberate but not hurried. Every time he smiled at something I said, and it wasn't the sarcastic, mocking smile I was used to. It was real. And I realized I was falling for him. Wednesday night, I got a text from him. "Aiden, basement, need to show you something." I didn't hesitate. I knew exactly where that basement was, and more importantly, I knew what it meant when he called me there. I arrived to find him pacing, restless, hands tugging at the sleeves of his hoodie. The trophies glimmered behind him, untouched, as though they'd lost their power the moment he let me in. "You okay?" I asked gently. He laughed, a nervous, shaky sound that made my chest twist. I, I don't know. I had another fight with my dad today." I flinched slightly, but stayed. "Do you want to talk about it?" He ran a hand through his hair and shook his head. "No, he doesn't listen anyway. I'm tired of arguing, tired of pretending." I stepped closer, letting my hand rest near his. "You don't have to pretend with me." He finally stopped pacing, shoulders slumping. "I've been a jerk, Evan. At school, here, everywhere. I pushed people away. I insulted you. And for what? Because I didn't know how to exist as myself? His voice cracked. I'm sorry. For everything. You don't have to apologize, I said softly. You're figuring yourself out. That's not a crime. He looked at me, eyes wide, raw, vulnerable. I feel like I'm falling apart sometimes. Like I'll never be enough. And then you're here. And you make it easier. Not perfect, not everything, just easier. I swallowed, my chest tightening. Then don't let go. He stepped closer, just slightly, our shoulders brushing. I won't, he whispered. I want this. Us. If you want it too. I do, I breathed. The kiss that followed was nothing like the first one in the basement. It was gentle, steady, certain. Not desperate, not chaotic. Two people leaning into something real, something fragile, something worth holding on to. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I don't know what the future holds, he admitted. Neither do I said, but we'll figure it out. Together. He smiled, and it was like a weight lifted, not just off him, but off both of us. School the next day felt different. For the first time, Aiden walked through the hallways without a mask. He smiled at classmates without calculation, laughed without sarcasm, and occasionally he'd catch my eye and give a small nod, like a secret between us. Max noticed immediately. Brooks has loosened up, he whispered, eyes wide. And you're glowing, man. I laughed quietly, elbowing him. Maybe we're both just surviving. Aiden and I navigated the next weeks carefully, learning each other's rhythms, respecting boundaries, finding joy in small moments. Notes cast in class, shared lunches, stolen glances at football practice. No grand gestures, no declarations, just honest, real connection. And slowly, the world outside seemed a little less suffocating. My parents noticed my lighter mood. My friends noticed the subtle changes in his behavior. Life didn't become perfect, but it became ours. One Friday evening, I walked home from the bus stop and found Aiden waiting outside my house. He didn't speak at first, just offered a hand, and I took it. That simple touch, steady and grounding, said more than any words ever could. You okay? I asked, smiling. He nodded. Better, because of you. And you? I pressed. I'm learning, he said, eyes soft, honest. Learning how to exist as me, and how to exist with you. I leaned into him, letting our hands intertwine naturally. Then we'll keep learning, together. For the first time in a long time, I believed it. Not because life was perfect, not because everything was fixed, but because sometimes finding someone who understands the chaos inside you is enough.
If you enjoyed the story, please comment, like, and subscribe so you'll get notified when part 2 comes out.